Hi, good morning. Welcome to Walk the Talk, where we walk as we talk about life-changing things and our challenges that we face as business people. Today I'm alone and I couldn't find anyone to talk about pricing because I feel like the conversation on pricing is quite tricky for everyone. They really don't know how to talk about it, and I would be lying if I said, you know what, this one I have perfected. I know a lot about pricing. So let's start. Let's talk about pricing. The first time I interacted with pricing, let me first start by saying that pricing is highly dependent on how you see yourself, your self-esteem and self-confidence. And we have discussed this so many times with different ladies, that pricing is highly dependent on how we feel about ourselves. There was a lady who used to buy watches quite cheap on AliExpress, and I remember she used to sell them like 10 times, and I used to ask her, how are you able to do this? And she'd tell me, how can somebody not want to afford such a thing that is 5,000, 10,000 in terms of a price of a watch. She told me that I have tested, it's a good watch, it's working, it looks classy, let me sell how I want. When I've gone to the rabbit hole of pricing on TikTok, on Google, wherever I have researched, one thing that has come up about how do I price my product is price how you want to price it. Your only goal as an entrepreneur and as a business person is to find people who are going to buy your products at that price. So how do you price your product? How you want to price it. Price it venye unataka, but there are things you should always put into consideration. Let's get into it. We are in the business of making profit. We are not in the business of making a business just busy. Imejaa tu na make profit. So what should you do when you're doing a business? First, you consider the cost of the product. So the price is ndio bei ya your product. The second thing is you can look at the perceived value of that product in the market. If the product haiko kwa market, you're lucky. You're very lucky, especially if it's not in the market in your country. You can do the pricing you want. You should also consider the one thing that I feel like it's also underestimated is usually the customer acquisition cost. Customer acquisition cost is sometimes quite pricey than what we think, especially in the online space. It becomes quite pricey. Always consider the customer acquisition cost when you're pricing your things, because you might be in the business of being busy and not making any profit, and then it affects what? Your cash flow. Another thing you should always consider is, am I able to do a clearance sale on this product if it becomes a slow moving product? Am I able to do 50% off, if I'm doing clearance? Because unaweza cost pricing, you can put some margins ati kupunish your competitor, and at the end of the day you can't even do like 50% off, or wezi bakisha anything for yourself. Another thing, let me tell you about competitors. The more you watch them, the more you're going to make the wrong decision, because sometimes you don't know what's happening at the back doors. Haujui what is happening. So be careful when you're watching competitors when it comes to pricing. You can see the perceived value of the product, but mkiuliza huyu ana making aje profit, wao usijali. Watu wengine wanakuanga na strategy. They don't have strategies of growing their pages. They have strategies of building a clientele fast, and they don't highly depend on their business in terms of making money and taking care of their basic needs. Okay, so you should always consider that. Also, please, when you're saying your price, say it boldly. Say it with confidence, in your bei yangu. And I feel like, which is I'm I'm also wrong for saying this. You don't have to keep mentioning affordable or luxury or anything. If a product is good, customers will wataona. You don't have to keep reminding them it's affordable. You don't have to keep reminding them it's luxury, especially when you're overpricing and then unaongezea hapo luxury. It starts to look fake. It starts to look fake for sure. So when you're starting out as an entrepreneur, there's usually the need of you feel the need to be cheap. Tumesema first, it's usually the self-esteem issue first, but sometimes you're like, my costs are not so high. I don't have here and here challenges, but this is where you realize you're not able to grow the business. You remember when I talk about my 3 S's? I have them on my Instagram about you have to look for small products, you have to specialize, and you also have to look for products with a good margin, especially because a product with a good margin when starting out, it allows you as an entrepreneur to have kidogo money to keep. You also have kidogo money to use, and you have kidogo money to return to the business. So a good margin is you can do 3x 4x when you're starting out. It helps you so much to grow even your capital. Let's touch base on psychology in pricing. That's a whole topic. It's a big topic about around it. But things like instead of putting 1,000 bob, you put 999 just to make it look like it's much cheaper. That happens quite oftenly. It just registers in the mind that thing is cheaper. You can also see that another thing is also to have a product with 3 prices. It can be the same product but have 3 prices, and the one that you want to go faster, the one that you want to move faster, always make sure it's the middle price. For example, you have a sandal, so one is around 1,500, another one is 1,000, and the another one is 500. The customer will perceive the 1,500 unnecessarily expensive. The 1,001 makes more sense, and the 500 bobbies, it might not be such good quality. So that is one of the things in psychology in pricing. And also you can do a bundle valuing, buy 2 get 1 free. I used to love bundle, by the way. I used to be a fan of bundle by the kitambo, because I would see it would make much sense, and nikiambia watu, instead of making my margin 200 shillings or 300 shillings, I would say buy 2 of them, and then I'd say, okay, I'll make margin of 1,000 shillings if I bundle up. I loved bundling, by the way. Bundling is also a very good idea because people perceive that they are saving. The most important thing about psychology in pricing is you have to learn how to communicate your pricing. You have to learn to communicate your pricing. You have to learn to communicate the perceived value. You have to learn to communicate by how you shoot your products. You have to learn to communicate by how you sell yourself. That is how you learn perceived value when it comes to psychology in pricing. So how do you confidently communicate your pricing? Say it without hesitation. Bei yangu, by the way, ni 3,000. Bei yangu ni 30,000. Usike ukisema wewe uko na ngapi, because this is common. Ati wewe utatoa ngapi? Now when you start there, I start feeling wewe unataka kunienjoy. Say your price with confidence. This is my price. This is what I charge. Remember, you're not forcing anyone to buy. You're not forcing anyone to buy. You're just offering value. It's an exchange thing, okay? It's a buy, sell and buy. So it is an exchange thing. It's tunafanya barter exchange, tunafanya exchange. So you're not forcing. And if anyone says your price is expensive, what do? You know they are not your client. It means that you have not looked for your clients. You've not searched for your clients. And remember we said the most important thing with pricing is to look for people who can buy your price. So at what point do you adjust your prices? Let me tell you about adjusting pricing. The only struggle I've had with adjusting pricing is when you've already built a certain clientele. And when you've built a certain clientele who are used to this price, it becomes so hard for them to warm up to the new pricing. If you're looking for a new target market, you start struggling with that. It actually usually feels like you're starting a business again. That is actually the feeling somebody gets. It's like you're starting a business again. So that's why sometimes you might start pricing your things a different way, and then you start saying aki watanunua. Yes, kuna watu wa kununua, but si watu wako anymore. Unaanza biashara tena, by the way. But you can always review your prices when your cost ikipanda. Again, we're in the business of making profit, not being busy. If things start zikianza kupanda, you have to review your prices. I don't feel the need to always go down in prices. I don't feel the need, because it means that sometimes I feel the challenges that you face, you might face again. What you can do is probably give a discount. Ukiona the market price of things have become cheaper, you can give a discount to your clients, but not saying that it's now cheaper. I don't like it. I don't feel the need, especially for a small business owner, because you're trying to build capital. Pricing is basically about confidence. Pricing is basically about the costs. Pricing is basically about communicating your value. And pricing is about getting the right clientele for your business. That is the summary for pricing. That is all. You have to sit down, think about all those things and how they directly affect your business to price your product. But it is about perceiving your value. If you decide to go the high end, please deliver the high end manner. If you decide to go the low end, just make sure you give good services, but always remember you have to work a little bit harder for you to maintain your cash flow and your profit. Remember, we are in the business of making money. We are not in the business of being busy. Cheap doesn't always build a business. You know what builds a business? Confidence and value. That is what builds a business. Thank you so much for listening to this short segment on pricing. I hope you've learned a thing or two. Please comment, ask question, and you can even just comment and say how much do you think I should charge this product, and we can maybe go through it and see what is the best price for your product according to what we've discussed. Goodbye. See you on the next episode.